Hi, and thank you for watching this video today. My name is Alessandra Saviotti, and I'm speaking from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where I live and work as a curator educator, and I am a PhD researcher at the Liverpool John Moores University. As a long-term collaborator of the association, the Arte Útil, I'm very happy today because I'll get to ask some questions to John Oakes, who is actively taking part of the Diego de la Vega Coffee Co-op, a project by Fran Ilich, which is included in our Arte Útil archive. Thank you, John, for agreeing to record this interview.
My pleasure, Alessandra. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and so then to break the ice, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself first, and then perhaps how did you get to know the co-op?
Sure. My name's John Oakes. I live in New York City, where I was born, and I'm an editor, a book editor and publisher and writer. And I got to know Fran and his project really through the Vera List Center at the New School. Fran and I got to know one another, and I thought what he was doing sounded, I guess I was fascinated by it. And I'd heard a lot about the Zapatistas, of course, and what they were doing appealed to me. What I understood, I should say, of what they were doing appealed to me, trying to set up a semi-autonomous zone that protected the rights of indigenous people and was really a defensive mechanism to prevent people without a lot of conventional resources, helping them protect themselves from the forces of a larger, more monotonous society. Monotonous isn't the word, but a society that really didn't care about their interests, I guess.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you mentioned that. And I wonder if this is the reason why did you decided to become a member of the Consumption Co-op?
Yes, well, Fran, through his co-op, presented a direct and not very onerous, he wasn't asking a lot of members of the co-op, but you could feel that in a very small way, you were voting almost to support this movement in a very low-key way. And people like Fran and his colleagues who really risked their lives and for it in pursuit of a greater value. I mean, here I am sitting comfortably in New York, and I thought it was a very easy proposition to support.
And so you said that you approached the project through the, let's say, an art and culture organization, but so then were you aware that this is also an art project?
Secondarily, as somebody involved in the book world, publishing, I'm obviously not, I react openly to the arts. It's tangentially, I'm on the edge of it. But that wasn't what attracted me to it. It wasn't a negative in any way. I certainly don't object to that, but my primary interest was in lending a bit of support to the Zapatistas, as I say, in a way that wasn't painful in the least to me, and in fact it made me feel good in a tiny way that in a very tiny way I could express my support, even just by drinking my morning coffee.
Nice.
But yes, sorry, Alessandra, to answer your question, that it was an art project is, yeah, I guess it's a plus, but I would have done it whether or not had an artist behind it.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for your answer. Then, of course, your answer really opens up for us, at least, that we work around these projects to really understand how they work and how much they could do actually, and how they are meaningful. Like in the life of people that approach them from another angle. And I mean another angle rather than the angle of art. And for us, it's very important to understand, like the reason why there is this curiosity of approaching and engaging with this kind of art projects. And perhaps you answered this, let's say, issue or question right before my comment, which is, like, I would like to support in some way with like a simple action, that it doesn't have to be such a big scale action, but like a small action in order to support, like a movement, or like something like the production of coffee by the Zapatista. So thank you for that.
Sorry, I just, on your point, I guess the fact that Fran is an artist, and that, I think, had to have informed his approach, the way he presents the coffee, the way it's packaged, literally, the image on the bags of coffee, the way the I think you had a website promoting it, and so I guess that infuses the whole enterprise. So the artistic approach, it wasn't polemic, it wasn't, support our brothers and sisters in Chiapas. It was much more, it was more subtle, and maybe that that artistic approach also is part of the whole thing.
Yeah. So then, because you mentioned some details like the packaging, etc., I'm curious to understand a little bit more. How do you get your coffee? Like, for example, is it distributed door to door, or do you gather somewhere in New York City, or I don't know, like Fran organize some gathering? I'm curious to hear.
Sure. So Fran, it's a subscription service, and Fran says, so we have a new shipment in. Do you need some? And I say, sure. It's kind of like drugs. And yes, sure. And so we meet somewhere. It's not done, undercover or anything, but I've met him at the top of the stairs to the subway, the New York, the trains. I've met him at my office on 14th Street. Sometimes he comes here where we live in Chelsea. So yeah, it's what's convenient for the two of us. Oh, okay. And I've also seen him at actually at a book fair that I participate in. I was surprised to see he had a stand set up, so I bought a bunch of packages from him there. But yeah.
I
think my impression is that the coffee comes in sort of bursts of activity, and because it's not through conventional channels.
Yeah. So then it means that you don't have like do you know other people that are part of the same co-op, or that is secondary?
No, that's an interesting question. I don't, but I would imagine I do. I've never asked Fran about that, and but I'd be surprised if there were people that I didn't know people were part of it. But it's not like we get together and there's a club. But that's an interesting idea. I guess one could do that, but because presumably the people who participate in this all share a certain outlook.
Yeah.
And that would,
Yeah. No, it's actually super interesting, because it's really a way, I think, really you know, like a tangible way of infiltrating also a certain kind of context using some tools. For example, the idea of the cooperative, or like the idea of this kind of door-to-door, or like really interpersonal exchange or one-to-one exchange, but rereading it with, let's say, a more also sustainable way, because, you know, like you meet when it's convenient for you in different places, just you know, you have this kind of personal exchange. So it's quite interesting for me to see how it really works for real, because somehow it also readapted some ways of let's say meeting, or like thinking about the cooperative space, which one might have an idea of, you know, like having this huge meeting in places between each other, etc., etc. But of course now it's also, I guess, not possible to meet in big events, etc. So somehow it made me think that a project like this also had in mind some sort of vision for the future, which unfortunately now it's the pandemic, but this idea of the one-to-one exchange in order to share, let's say, the support of another kind of social movement, it's quite interesting. And it made me think a little bit on the idea of sustainability. So, for example, when we think about case studies that we have in the Arte Útil archive, we also pay attention on how this project are sustainable through time, and that does not necessarily mean economic sustainability, right? So Diego de la Vega Co-op could be a meaningful example of how to activate different way of sustaining the Zapatista farmers, but also to foster, as you said before, this network of transnational solidarity, right, between social movements. So can you say something about?
I don't know if I said that, but I agree totally with nice, a lovely phrase. I think what you, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, please.
But I think what you say is also interesting, that it brings what is an abstract movement thousands of miles away in Chiapas, and it makes it very personal, and it's a direct, I'm trying to avoid the words direct action, which has a certain meaning, but it's a direct contact and makes the abstract personal. And in that way, I think it's a wonderful, and this way, in this fashion, every time I pass a Starbucks, I'm thinking, where did they get their coffee from? How come it's not from the Zapatistas? Why is it difficult to get the coffee? Yeah, why should, and just sort of means of how resources are allocated and prevented from being allocated. I think that's also an interesting, you know, just the concept that you assume that whatever you have, whether it's a, you know, mouse or a coffee, it sort of is there, but to start thinking about how it's allowed to be there or not allowed to be there, I think is so that has me thinking about that too.
And I'm curious to know, since when did you are drinking the coffee?
Fran would know better than I, but I would guess it's at least I think I want to say 5 years at least. Maybe not that long, but somewhere around that. But certainly 5 years is, I think, a solid guess. Maybe 4, but
yeah. Yeah. And like, just because I'm curious, did you notice like a specific, you know, like, is the coffee better, or like something about the product?
Yes. No, I think it's interesting. The beans tend to be smaller. I unfortunately don't have it at the moment, but they tend to be smaller. They're less, a little less, the flavor is rich and powerful, but and I think it's partly because they're, you know, it's completely organic and grown without fertilizer, sort of artificial fertilizers and chemicals. But the flavor of the coffee, it's very rich, dark, powerful coffee. Not if you want to make your classic American coffee, which I'm sure you know, Alessandra, is
Yeah.
not like good Italian or Dutch coffee. It has to be watered down a lot, but I like the very dark coffees.
Ah, nice, nice, nice. I would like to try once. Let's see if if we are able to travel, perhaps next year or in the future. I would love to try to taste it. This is a weird question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How do you see your involvement in 10 years from now with this project?
Well, for one thing, I hope, I think it would probably be a safer bet if one were guessing to assume that the Zapatistas will continue, maybe with the new generation, than that they would be not around. So if that's the case, and what would be great is if there were some sort of reconciliation allowed between, I guess it would have to be the Zapatistas and the Mexican government, and therefore the US government, which would allow them to sell their products openly in the US. And then it's just a huge market of people, most of whom could care less about the politics of their coffee, but who would just go for good, organic coffee. I guess you could market it, pick, straight from the Chiapas highlands. You could have some nice marketing phrase. But that's not quite what you asked. I hope to be around for 10 years and still drinking the coffee of the co-op. But yeah, beyond that, I'm not sure how else I would be involved. I wouldn't mind if I could help them sell through, I don't know, maybe through, I have a little online magazine. I'd be delighted if we could have some sort of a alliance there. But again, I don't know how excited people get about attaching politics to their coffee. That may be maybe a small minority of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, an interesting issue, an interesting topic, because to go back to the archive, we have a lot of case studies that are actually using food as a way to understand better what's going on in terms of the politics of food production and distribution. And of course, it's such a let's say a hot topic also now, and how the trading of food and the food industry work, and who has access to certain kind of products, who has not, despite the fact that these products are harvested and picked in some specific places, and they are consumed somewhere else. So that's an interesting thing to say. And I have to say that with coffee, it's so fascinating to see, the network of the economic development and how political economy is organized, right? Because it's quite central. So that's a really interesting, and it's not a case that we decided to understand a little bit more about how the project work and circulate also outside the context of the art. So that's really great. I don't know if you have something else that you'd like to mention with respect to the project.
Just that I'm really great. I really mean this. I mean, I really only know Fran through this project, but I'm grateful to have I think I guess the illusion even of having some connection to what they're doing in Chiapas, I find that exciting and a privilege. And I'm not, I don't think that, when I drink a cup of coffee, I'm changing anything, but it's a small reminder of I guess the fragility of our relationships and also the sustainability of our relationships, and if that makes sense. And I guess I'm grateful for that, and I wish them well, and I hope it expands. I think it's yeah, I'm not suggesting that this is transformative, but it does make me think about what's going on down there. And obviously, I'm somewhat politically attuned to this, but still, my thoughts aren't always in Mexico, um, and I think I really am appreciative of and how difficult it was to get this stuff from Chiapas, New York City. It's maybe friends told you about it, but it's not easy. And so it's impressive, and I find it, I guess, moving, not to be melodramatic about it, but it's a bit moving, and you don't normally get that from a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is, for example, one keyword, or let's say key concept, that we have been using a lot for describing this kind of projects, and specifically the project of Fran, which is one-to-one scale. So what does it mean to present an art project as a one-to-one scale project, which means that it's basically not a representation of what it could be, but it's let's say, in this case, the coffee co-op per se, in the form of an art project. And this is, like, I think the special character of this kind of project. And you just said it's so moving to think about a project like that, because it touches, like our feelings somehow, because you have the feeling that perhaps, okay, you don't change the world, but you make a step towards that change. And yes, it's real because it works in a one-to-one scale. So I guess, like, the money, for example, that are collected from the sales are going back to the production. So it could be a small gesture, for example, for you in this case, but it's like invaluable gesture, because first of all, it shows that to do something else with a different approach with respect to economy and to coffee, and working with Zapatista farmers is possible. And second, it's part with this kind of process that touches you as an individual, and you really feel that you can make the difference, because it's on a one-to-one scale. So thank you very much for your last remark, because it's really great.
Well, thank you, Alessandra. I'm very glad you're examining this project. It seems worthwhile to me.
Yeah. Okay, John. So thank you so much for your time and for your answers. It was really great to have the possibility to meet you virtually. Hopefully, I don't know if I would end up in New York or you come to Amsterdam. Let's try to have some coffee. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Alessandra. I enjoyed the chat.
Same here.